Welcome to Baba's Talk Show, recorded live in Gold Coast, Australia.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Baba's Talk Show. Now, I am Hussain Baba. Now, today's episode is a very, very important topic. And joining with me today is our usual co-host, Afshin. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You been all right?
I've been. What are we talking about today, Haji?
Today is a very, very important topic, and it affects many lives.
Yes.
It's about domestic violence.
Domestic violence.
Yes, it's about domestic violence. It's a very important topic.
It's a very important topic for all the communities.
That's right. That's
so
right.
we're starting on the Gold Coast?
Oh yes, we'll start with the Gold Coast. Our next episode will be on Brisbane, but we'll start off with Gold Coast because too many things happening in the Gold Coast, right? Okay, we'll be back shortly after this message. Okay, welcome back. As I mentioned, it's a very important topic that we're going to discuss today. And to assist us in discussion, we have some of the high-profile people from the Gold Coast. Let me start the introduction with, on my right, Miss Cornelia Babbage. Well, she's also known as the Queen of Gold Coast. Well, she's the principal of Multicultural Family Organization. Welcome, Cornelia. And next to Cornelia is Marica, who is looking after a program called Sara in the Gold Coast within MFO organization. Okay, on my left, I have Sergeant DV Phillips. What's your area?
I'm the Domestic Violence Coordinator and I work in the Gold Coast District Domestic and Family Violence Unit.
Okay, and DV, of course, our man Afshin. Thank you for coming. Once again, thank you all for coming for this, to discuss about this topic. Now, let me start with you, Debbie. Can you give us what is the prevailing statistic of domestic violence in the Gold Coast?
Yeah, so the Gold Coast historically and continues to have around 10% of the whole of Queensland's domestic and family violence. In 2015, in response to the Not Now, Not Ever report, the Gold Coast District Officer started the Domestic Violence Task Force, which increased our unit from 2 to 13 staff. Okay. So we've been building upon that, and as of March of this year, the unit has been formalised with the authority of the Police Commissioner. So we now have a substantive unit, the Domestic and Family and actual Vulnerable Persons Unit as well.
So does it reflect?
So that is to assist us to manage the amount and the prevalence of domestic violence within our society here on the Gold Coast. And of course, we all know that it's throughout all of our communities here in Queensland.
So in the Gold Coast, how's the situation in the Gold Coast? I mean, how's the trend? Has it been steady or increasing? How is it?
I would say that the amount of domestic violence on the Gold Coast, specifically our homicides, which we're incredibly proud of, we haven't had a domestic violence homicide in Queensland since January 2018.
Wow.
And yet statistics of 18-19 showed 25 of the homicides in Australia out of 39 occurred in Queensland. So we are working very closely with our partners to ultimately reduce homicide and harm to our families.
Good.
But there are other things that are not just homicide. Violence to families generally is steady, but there are complexities into reporting, which particularly occurs in our culturally and linguistically diverse communities.
That's right. Well, I'll come back to you very shortly. Okay, let's move on to the Queen. I know you have been in this scene for a pretty long time. You've been handling cases related to domestic violence. Now, from your opinion, is there any sufficient infrastructure available in the Gold Coast to handle these type of cases?
Well, I must say at the moment that we have a huge increase in the domestic violence incidents on the Gold Coast and even in Australia as a general during the COVID situation, because of isolation and people being together in the house and not able to get out and ask for assistance. However, we do provide direct service provision to the ladies, and we try to see people on the day that they actually arrive to our office. However, we would like to be able to provide more assistance to people as a violence prevention, as a community education, as a going to the school or different organization and talking about domestic violence in order to prevent future incidents. And also be able to have more accommodation available, especially emergency accommodation that we can have on the Gold Coast for people that are in immediate need with their family members, their children, and have a children counseling as well.
So in the meantime, within your organization, you have a program called Sara. And I'm sure Marica can talk more about it. Can you explain how do you operate the Sara program?
Of course, thank you. So Sara is domestic and family violence support service for women from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. We are very young service, only 3 years young. We are based in Southport and we operate from 9 to 5 on the weekdays. I'm really proud to say that we have a multilingual team here of highly skilled and qualified workers from a range of cultural and linguistic backgrounds. However, of course, not our workers cannot speak the languages of all the cultures that we need to offer support. So we also use this, which is translating and interpreting service, where we specifically request female interpreters. So that's, we do face-to-face and telephone support as well as the groups.
Roughly at this moment, how many cases are you handling, like Sara?
So I acknowledge numbers are very important. So at the moment we have approximately 330 women that we actively support. 45 of them are assessed as high risk. But when I say numbers are very important, it is really important to understand the complexity of needs of women that we support. So sometimes because of the complexities, we spend 6 hours in one day trying to support one woman. Which,
so it's a case by case,
absolutely.
All right? Case by case. Okay, Afshin, it seems that you want to ask a question.
I wanted to ask Debbie one question, because Debbie mentioned that there's 10% of the domestic violence incidents that happens on the Gold Coast, 10% of Queensland. So how does that look in regards to the population? Do we possess 10% of the population of Queensland that we have there?
Yes, we do. So it does relate roughly with the population of the state. The Gold Coast has had a long-running relationship with DV Support Services that have been going for many years, and we are known throughout the country to be a very open police unit, and we work very in a very intense collaborative way with our partners. And I would just like to say something that what Marica was saying in relation to the complexities of our cold community. We did some education with yourself, Hussain, some years ago about the complexities of the Immigration Act has actually has a change to it. So women or people who have come to this country on a spousal visa can have access to laws to help them be removed from being in a violent relationship. And that's something that a lot of people don't know, and I think it's really important. We talk about education. A lot of people stay in violent relationships, whether they be physically, emotionally, or psychologically, or financially abusive, for way too long. In a perfect world, people would manage things and it wouldn't get into the police system, and they wouldn't be severely harmed, or their children and their families. So that's a message today, is about prevention, support, and acknowledgement of getting help, and understanding that there is lots of things on the Gold Coast to support our domestic violence victims, but very much so in this environment, our culturally and linguistically diverse community.
Okay. Now, just to just when you mentioned about abusive, physical violence, abuse, and financial violence. Can you explain a bit on these three?
Okay, so I would encourage your users to go to punch into Google,
right?
QPS, Queensland Police Service,
right?
DV support,
okay,
and you'll find a wonderful website that it's a place where they can online report, they get lots of information,
right?
And to educate themselves about what domestic violence actually is.
Right.
Historically, people think about the woman with a black eye.
Yes.
We now know from many years of research,
right,
nationally and internationally,
right,
because domestic violence comes across all cultures,
right,
all financial strengths,
right,
and all educational barriers.
Okay.
So domestic violence does not discriminate whether you are highly uneducated, have a disability, or are the CEO of a very important company. Domestic violence is about power and control. Physical violence, for some victims, they wish they had a physical injury,
right,
because they're made to feel like there's something wrong in their head,
right,
because of the psychological or emotional or physical abuse, financial abuse.
Right.
So there are still women in our community who are given a budget. So they're only given a short amount of money that they have to pay all their bills and support their children. And the perpetrator of violence makes them feel guilty or a lower person in their relationship because they're not able to do that.
Okay.
Psychological abuse is considered to be extremely traumatic and has a lot more long-term effects. And they often talk about post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
So we talk about people who come back from war,
okay,
whose brain from lots of stress
right,
starts to realign itself and can't make safe choices.
all right,
Domestic violence victims
yes,
are suffering trauma 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
okay,
And they are suffering the same as someone who's been to war.
okay, all right. Yeah. As I mentioned, you've been in this field. Now, the cases that you handle, do you pick and choose, or you help anybody who comes and asks for help? And how are the cases referred to you?
We have a different referral pathways that even the police or different other organizations like Centrelink or TAFE excuse me, or Griffith University are referring people to us, or people can be also self-referred if they are aware that this service exists.
Right.
However, we try to assist people on arrival. We try, MFO has got this motto that we won't let waiting list happen with domestic violence service, because when people arrive, they need help on arrival that day. If you don't help them that day and make appointment for the next day, they may not be able to attend. They may not be alive, to be more specific. So we try to assist anyone that knocks the door and asks for assistance.
All right. So that means now, so once they approach you, then you enroll them in your program, which is the Sara program, right? Now, can you just give us a typical example? What do you do? Let's say somebody come to you, say, look, I'm a victim of domestic violence. So what's the next stage? What do you do?
So as our name says,
yeah,
Sara stands for support, assessment, referral, and advocacy. And it really explains what
right,
is it that we do with women.
Right.
Women are often told that no one will believe them, or that they shouldn't be talking about what happens at home with the strangers.
Right.
So the moment that women come approach us for support, we give them a bit of reassurance.
Right.
We really acknowledge how brave they are,
right,
to come forward and ask for support.
Right.
We also make sure that women know that we will never try to convince them to make decisions that they are not ready for. So we are kind of guided
right,
by women's own experiences. We ask them quite a few questions to find out what is happening at home. That helps us to understand how dangerous their partners may be.
right,
And then after we collect kind of this information, which we call risk assessment,
right,
we support women to do a bit of safety planning.
okay,
Safety planning could be planning to leave the relationship or to keep themselves safe in the relationship. And through that process, because we understand that especially migrant women, very often they don't speak the English language, they don't know what their rights are, they are isolated. So we want them to have opportunity to what we call make make informed decision.
Right.
We connect them
Right.
if they choose to with legal advice service, immigration advice, what Debbie was talking about before. Information about their entitlement for Centrelink, about crisis accommodation.
Right.
So when they make those decisions, they know exactly, or as good as they can, what they can expect from those decisions.
Right.
And we are free of charge. It's really important. And also,
so that's free of charge, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
and
that's
what
free of
is
charge. Okay.
also important is that women can be supported by us for 1 day or for 2 years, 3 years. We don't have the expiry date because of the nature of domestic and family violence.
Okay.
It's very hard to know when it stops.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So, any victims, men and women out there who are in a domestic violence situation, what do? Do they contact the police first, or they contact Sara organization? What do?
I think it's important, and as Marica has said, that this is a victim's journey to safety.
Right.
So whatever the victim feels is the best pathway.
Yes.
If it is urgent, and I think people know if they're at fear of serious harm or death,
right,
then obviously always ring 000. But if they are navigating their way from a violent relationship and they feel that perhaps coming to the police, they're not ready for that, because the law says we must act, whereas a support service isn't defined by law about what must happen.
Right.
So I think it's important to ring perhaps DV Connect, which is a 1-800 811 811, which is the state service. You can ring up anonymously and get some advice.
Okay.
So it's important that people experiencing domestic violence get information to help them make safer choices.
Right, right.
And I just wanted to quickly touch on, while you're talking about alcohol and drugs and domestic violence.
Right.
Perpetrators of domestic violence that also have alcohol or drug related issues generally don't perpetrate violence on other members of the community, their family, their bosses and their mates.
Right.
So when people make excuses, oh, it's just when he drinks.
Right.
But when he drinks, he doesn't punch his boss or his mates in the face.
That's right. Yes.
Or when he drinks, he doesn't talk unkindly to his female work colleagues.
Right.
So it is very much about power and control and image management.
Right.
Alcohol and drug abuse can exasperate or escalate the problem.
Right.
But alcohol and drugs is not the problem with domestic and family violence. And I think I just want to make that really clear, because it's an excuse, and unfortunately perpetrators of violence, they make us unconsequential allies to their bad behaviour, and we need to call them out.
Good.
So we want victims to know that it's not their fault,
right,
that there is lots of things, but to ring DV Connect at the very least, 1-800 811 811, to get some advice and support, and we will take you on your journey, whether it's through the police system or through a support system. Queensland really is not now, not ever.
Good. That was a very, very good point, Debbie, that made.
Violence does not know the borders, religions and cultures. And our experience show, and evidence as well, that women and their children from the cultures where abuse of alcohol and drugs is not very high and prominent, still suffer from domestic and family violence. So that kind of...
okay. So in other words, can I say, among your cases that you have, majority of them are from non-Australian? I mean, when I say newcomers from overseas?
They are women who were born overseas, and most of them have lived in Australia for less than 5 years.
Okay.
And this year we had women from 89 different cultures.
Okay. All right.
So just this year, 89 cultures.
I may sound a bit silly. Are there any men?
We are funded by the government to support women. We are aware that some men experience domestic violence, but statistically I think is 1 in 6 women that would at some point in their life experience violence, and 1 in 25 men.
So in your case, so far you not handle any men?
We would support men to access other services, but we are not funded to work with men.
Okay. No. So where do the men go? I mean, there are men, according to statistic, there are men victims also, male victims, right?
Yes, there are. Yes, of course.
Okay.
But but overwhelmingly,
So let's say how the person like.
So there's a range of different research that's done at different times.
Right.
And what we have found in the last, so statistically it was about 90% female, 10% male victims.
Okay.
The way that statistics are a guide to what is actually seen, but the way that statistics are collected by the government, we often find that the police will take out an order to protect a woman.
Right.
And within a couple of days, the male will be accessing the criminal justice system, making similar claims. So what we call a counterclaim.
Right.
So those statistics sit in the system.
Uh-huh.
But when the magistrates unpack the evidence, 85% of those applications are dismissed.
Okay.
So it's really important about talking about statistics, but we know globally and nationally that generally the perpetrator of domestic and family violence is a male person.
Right.
But there are males that are victims.
Right.
And that's complex for us because the amount of services to support them, including their peer group, it's quite difficult. I recently supported a man in a court environment, very embarrassed, shamed, this shouldn't be happening to me.
Right.
But I gave him the definition, the stalking, the emotional abuse, the attempt, the threats of suicide. And he was able to, after a day or so, even though he'd gone through and an order had been made to protect him from the offender, which was a female, a smaller, younger female, he was able to look at it and actually understand, oh my goodness, this has been happening to me for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But the shame and the ability of, oh, you'll be right, mate. You know, men aren't weak.
That's right.
Domestic violence isn't about weakness and strength. It's about power and control.
Yes, that's
and
right.
so, yes, men are victims, but they're less likely. And we would always want them to come. Our last homicide that we had was a woman shooting a man. And we've just seen recently another one, which I'm not sure, somewhere in Queensland, what the circumstances of that was. But it's certainly, if you're in fear, then you need to get some support.
That's right, that's right. Well, men out there, you heard it from Debbie. Don't be embarrassed. Please contact the support system. Support, well, not you guys. All right?
And also men who use violence in the relationship can access support so that they can learn how to change their behavior and attitude towards their family.
All right. Okay, that's good. Now, Afshin, you must be having it like...
I had a question from all, I guess. It was like, with their experience and what they've been through, I just wanted to know, what do you think is the actual cause? Or there could have been just one cause, maybe causes of domestic violence, because we said alcohol does fuel it, but it's not the actual cause. So what do you think it is? Or the underlying cause of domestic violence, what actually makes someone to actually be abusive, whether financially, emotionally, or physically?
Me first? That question has been researched over many decades.
Yes, exactly.
From some very well-respected researchers throughout the globe. There is no one cause. Psychologists will say that it's people with narcissistic personality disorders or people that have other sorts of behavioural disorders. For us as normal, caring people, it's difficult for us to understand how somebody would do that to another human being. So we want to label it with, well, what's the problem, so let's fix it. We have to understand that these people walk among us, so we need to hold them accountable, identify them, and ensure that we provide pathways for victims to be strong, to report it, to stop it. But there are lots of different reasons. There are some cultural, there's some research around the patriotic or patriarchal system that our Western society has. And then there's other cultural and linguistically where, you know, the man is the breadwinner. There are lots of cultures where the man works and the woman looks after the home, but there's not domestic violence there. So the disparity is about power and control and treating each other with respect.
Right.
Treat someone that you would want to treat yourself.
Right.
And when you say, what is the cause is the person who perpetrates the violence.
Okay. I think you answered my question because I was trying to get to that word respect. Because for me, it's just, if you have enough respect for women in general, you can't do that. You can't just go and belittle someone, whether like emotionally or even financially try to control someone because you have that respect for them. Because I think that lots of respect between men and women sometimes that causes a lot of differences and maybe violence.
Men and women.
Yes, as I said,
some women are particularly disrespectful to their partners and shame them in the community.
Yes.
But the research generally does show that women are more likely to be victims of family violence.
All right. Well, Cornelia, now, from your opinion, is there, like, you see, now these perpetrators of these crimes, you know, people who perpetrate domestic violence, when they're charged by the police and then goes through the justice system. Now, do you feel the present justice system available is a good deterrent from any would-be abusers? I mean, like for example, let's say if somebody's been charged, the sentencing or the punishment, is it sufficient to deter from committing this crime again?
Well, my personal opinion, if you ask what, is that it's not sufficient, and that some changes in the legal system should be available and available very soon. Mm-hmm. One of them is domestic violence protection order when it's given.
Right.
There is a breach of domestic violence order that happens 1 or 2 or 3 times after the order was given, and it should be immediate jail term, in my opinion, for people that breach domestic violence order.
Okay.
And I will tell you why I believe that, because we recently in Queensland had a woman set alive with 3 children.
Right.
The person, perpetrator, ex-partner who did it, was actually twice breached domestic violence order. If the first time when he breached the order he was jailed for a certain amount of time, this woman and 3 kids would be alive today.
So, in other words, there was not sufficient protection available.
There is protection, but I think that the law should be much stricter in some cases, and not just domestic violence order telling a person you're not supposed to do this, because some people would read that and they wouldn't care. They would come the next night and knock the door again.
Okay. Question for me, during this COVID-19 situation since the start, has been any increase in the numbers with people being in quarantine or at home most of the time? How did that affect the whole situation in domestic violence?
So from the Queensland Gold Coast Police, we did not see an increase, and we actually saw a decrease in some applications, but that was more proportionately to do with the court system closed down.
Right.
What we did see an increase was our support systems that we work closely with hand in hand.
Okay.
Were working from home. Right. And so they were asking for us to help manage clients that they saw that were at risk. So we saw a greater request for assistance from our support agencies rather than victims out there in the community, because a lot of people were home. But I'm sure my colleagues, my support services have a different story, because people were less likely to perhaps report to the police because they were stuck in a quarantine environment.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're getting almost to the end of the show, but let us have a last word. Can we start with Marica? Anything that you would like to say, or Ed?
My message to all the women who may be suffering in silence is, please reach out for support and be reassured that your personal details will not be disclosed to your family, to your community members, or to anyone who you don't give us permission to talk about. And we take great care of the privacy of your information.
So that means you don't have to worry. It's very discreet. All the information will be private. Okay, not to worry. Okay, Queen, what do you have to add?
Well, as Marica said, all our services are free and confidential, and we really encourage women to contact us, and we will refer them further if we are not able to assist them. But it's very important that at certain stage in their lives, if you feel that you're not safe at home, you need to ask for support.
Okay, good. Thank you. Now, Debbie, your last word? Oh, for the show.
I would just like to thank you very much. I've known you for a long time.
Right.
And your strength and advocacy within your community helps us to keep our community safe.
Well, that's wonderful.
So thank you.
You're welcome anytime. And Afshin?
Well, I just wanted to say to all the men out there, if you know you're being abusive, because most of us know when we are doing it.
Right.
If we are doing it, we know, and we know we're doing something wrong. But sometimes it's the cultural background, sometimes it's your friends or family or your upbringing, whatever it is that keep you doing this. Yeah, just reach out, and there are a lot of support services that can help you stop this. So if you want to stop, just reach out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. You got the information, and anybody who are in a situation, abusive system, please do not hesitate to contact the police or the support system, and you'll get all this information at the end of this video. Okay, thank you for watching our show, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.